this is Kate Helmers with the Stepping Forward with Kate show. How are you today? Today, we are going to be talking about ovarian cancer awareness because it's September, and September is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. And today we have the perfect guest. Her name is Jen Coken, and she actually wrote a book about this. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. Hi, Jen. Nice having you.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. Wait till you hear all of the information. It's just absolutely amazing. But let me give you the backstory on Jen because she's really fun. We are so lucky to have her today because she's in the middle of a book release called Embrace the Ridiculous, a pocket guide to a better you. So thank you for taking time to come today.
Absolutely.
So Jen spent 6 years on the stand-up comedy circuit, and coming from LA, that is a tough gig. So kudos to you.
Thank
That
you.
is fantastic. She's also a well-known speaker, and for about 20 years has been coaching thousands and thousands of people, helping them to get beyond their self-made limitations. So I've asked Jen to come back for another show where I can pick her brain as far as the business side and love, etc. And she has agreed to come, so thank you again. So today, again, we're just going to concentrate on ovarian awareness. But before we go into that, we have a tradition here at the Stepping Forward Kate Show for 5 questions so we can get to know the guest a little bit better. So are you ready, Jen?
I'm ready. Wait, I have to itch my nose. Okay, go ahead.
I think that means, what is that, love or money coming in?
I think you're going to kiss a fool, Kate.
Oh, sorry about that. Well, hopefully he's a cute frog, right?
Hopefully, yeah, exactly.
Okay. What is a comedian that inspired you?
It's funny that the very first comedian I ever remember watching is Lucille Ball. And I was really little. I was probably like 4 years old, and I remember being so enamored with the I Love Lucy show, and my bedtime was 7 o'clock, and I used to cry because I Love Lucy, there was like I think it was an hour, it was from like 7 to 8, and I had to go to bed, or maybe I got to 7:30. My mother would never let me stay up past 7:30 to watch the last half hour. And I always remembered her facial expressions and the, not just what she said, but it was like she used her whole body. Yes. For comedy, and that really stuck with me. And she had red hair like my mom.
Oh, that's so sweet. Okay, who is a public person that you've used as a mentor in business?
Well, I'll tell you something that very few people know. Ariana Huffington was one of my first clients. Back in the day, I had left Capitol Hill to open up my own consulting firm, and I was very adept at starting and managing nonprofits, and she hired me to start a nonprofit for her and then hired the executive director to take over. Now, at the time, you may remember, she kind of has had she's had a transformation in the way she looks at the world, and back then she was very conservative. And our beliefs were completely polar opposite, but the thing I have always loved about her and continue to love about her is she speaks her mind. She's very grounded, right, in who she is as a woman. She's not apologetic about it. She's unapologetic about it. She had written numerous books, and she was just very forthright and stood her ground in her own integrity and spoke her truth. And that really had an impact on me as somebody who had for a long time felt like, especially in politics or, you know, in the energy world where I used to work, it was a man's world. And do I need to become like a man to be a leader in my field? You know, and she showed me the answer was no, you need to be yourself.
Right. Yeah. Oh, wow. So interesting.
Yeah.
You have a ritual in the morning that helps you wake up or centers you.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. One is I meditate about 20 minutes. Sometimes it's only 5, depending on the amount of time I have. It could be just centered grounding, imagining, anchoring cords into the earth or up to the heaven, and just creating what my day is going to be about, but something to get me present. I also inhale peppermint oil in the morning to wake me up because just like a little bit in your palms to inhale, because that mint is very focusing and very refreshing. And I always try to watch a video from Ellen DeGeneres or something else that's going to make me laugh first thing in the morning.
I saw one of hers this morning and had all these puppies and everything.
Oh, I
That's,
know. That's a great way to get out of bed, right?
yeah, it's so true. And what is a flower that makes you smile?
Well, there's so many, but alstroemeриum, because it has no scent. And I know that's weird that it would make me smile, but my stepmom has a very, very, very sensitive nose. So the only flowers I can ever get her are alstroemeриum, and she makes me smile, and I love hanging out with her. So that's the first thing that came to mind.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. And what is what's a piece of music or something that completely calms and soothes you?
There is a piece of music by a composer by the name of either Frederick or Frederick de la Rue. And my mother found it when she was actually dealing with her ovarian cancer. And he calls it a channeled piece of music from the heavens. And she had it going nonstop when she was in hospice. And every time I need to feel centered and calm, it's as if this music is just like vibrationally just right through my body and just calms the brain. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, I'll have to listen to it. That sounds
Yeah.
fascinating. Oh, wow. So again, we're going to be talking about ovarian cancer today. And Jen wrote a book, and it has a wild title called When I Die, Take My Panties. And it's about bringing humor into dark moments.
Yes.
And I was wondering, Jen, if you could give us a little brief history about the book and just tell everybody a little bit about the book.
Yeah. Show and tell. There's the book right there. And it's teal for ovarian cancer with yellow because that was my mother's favorite color.
And teal is ovarian cancer color for the month. So that's
right. It's the ovarian cancer. Right. It's the color for September for ovarian cancer awareness. My mom told me to take her panties. I mean, there was just a woman who was diagnosed accidentally after being misdiagnosed for a year.
Wow.
So that's part of the issue with ovarian cancer. The symptoms, and I'm sure we'll get into this, are very hard to diagnose. So they were treating her for irritable bowel syndrome and candida, and her gynecologist was like, well, maybe we should do a hysterectomy because my mother had had fibroids, which I inherited from her. So when they went in to do the hysterectomy, they found the cancer. And by that point, it was stage 4. And that's what usually happens. And most women who are diagnosed at that stage are given less than a 30% chance of living 5 years. She lived just over 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so the last month of her life, I was out visiting her in Florida, and it was very surreal because she was taking me through like jewelry she wanted me to have. And my dad's dad, my grandfather, was a furrier, and there was a coat that he had made for my mom out of beaver skin, and she wanted me to have that, even though I've never worn it because not a fur wearer, but it has my grandfather's name in it, so I've never given it away. My mother was always very fashionable. And then she opens up this drawer and she's like, look, I've barely worn these. They're very expensive. Goodwill won't take them. You shouldn't throw them away. Take my panties. And I think it's in like chapter 3 of the book or something like that. And they're called hanky pankies, and they're the most comfortable thong underwear you'd ever wear. And now you have a picture of my mother's 7-year-old butt in thong underwear, so you can thank me for it later. So that's Kate, where the title came from. But the book itself, I mean, the last month of my mother's life, when I was there with her, she knew it was finally the end. She had tried everything, and and we came to a point where I kind of looked at her. She worked for NASA. She was a school teacher. She was such a contribution to the world. And I looked at her, I said, Mom, I want to make sure that your death makes a difference, as big of a difference as your life makes. I want to write a book about our journey and our special bond and kind of what we learned and how we grew. So after she died, even though I knew it was coming, it was still very, very difficult for any daughter and any person to lose their mom, And I wrote the book as my own personal way to grieve. And then it took me 7 rewrites in 4 years to get the gumption up to actually publish it, because I thought to myself, well, maybe it's just for me. Maybe there's not a place for it, what am I going to do with this? And it was actually my writing coach and a good friend of mine who convinced me to publish.
Oh, well, we are so glad you did.
Thank you.
It's amazing. I was reading up on notes for the interview, and a friend of mine called me and said, gosh, I feel so bloated. And she started going down the information that you put in this book. And I said, you need to get to the doctor. Well, it turns out it wasn't, but how ironic is that, it was just all the different symptoms. And it's always good to check because like you said, if you can have a hysterectomy and get rid of it, then you're way ahead of the game.
Yep. Yep. And the thing to note is even if you do have a full hysterectomy, you can still get ovarian cancer. Because what science now tells us is the ovarian cancer starts in the fallopian tubes. And as the fallopian tubes release the eggs into the ovaries, cells will kind of scatter. And so the cells could adhere to the peritoneal sac or somewhere else in your body. So so even though you get a full hysterectomy, you could still have one of those cells elsewhere in your body, unfortunately.
So it's good to how do you check on that or have your doctors check on that?
This is the problem. There's no test for ovarian cancer. So there's 23 different types of ovarian cancer. I know of cases in 18-month-old babies who have what's called germ cell ovarian cancer. They got it in utero. I know I have a friend who was a 7-year-old who was just undergoing her second round of chemo for ovarian cancer. The median age is 66, but that isn't the mean age, that's the median age, which means there's just as many cases before that age and just as many cases after. So the older you get, the more likely you are to have it. But I know of teenagers that have it. I know of 20-somethings that have it. And there's absolutely no test. Your pap smear tests for cervical cancer. The reason there's no test is because there's so many types. It's difficult to diagnose. So we need to be our best line of defense. Yep.
Paying attention.
Yes, paying attention to those symptoms. Should I talk about that? Because we keep referring to it. Okay,
yes.
We'll say it a bunch of times. So the thing I say to people is remember the acronym BEAT, like you beat a drum. So bloating, eating, abdominal, and trouble. What do those stand for? Bloating. And by the way, if you have all 4 of these symptoms at once for at least 2 weeks and no change in diet or exercise alleviates them, that's when you should go to the doctor, and I'll tell you in a minute what to say to the doctor. Okay. So it's bloating, right? Eating. So with eating, you feel full quicker. You don't have as much of an appetite. Just imagine where the ovaries, fallopian tubes, and uterus sit. It's behind those major organs by your bladder, your stomach, your intestines. So if you have ovarian cancer, it's going to start pushing against these major organs. So it could be pushing against your stomach, which means you're getting full too quickly, or you don't have as much of an appetite. Abdominal pain. Sometimes it's lower back pain, but I just tell people abdominal pain because it's easy to remember. Mm-hmm. And then T is trouble urinating. So more frequent urination or not being able to go, like feeling like you have to go and you can't release all the urine. So if the constellation of these 4 symptoms all at once, 2 weeks straight, you could try eliminating gluten, eliminating dairy, etc. None of that makes any difference. Then you go right to your gynecologist. Bypass your PCP, go straight to your gynecologist or your OB, whatever, if you have kids, you call it your OB/GYN, and say, prove to me I don't have ovarian cancer. Not prove to me I do, prove to me I don't.
What a great line. Okay,
yeah.
You know what we're going to do, Jen, if it's okay with you, is on our YouTube, on our your10keys.com page, at the very bottom, there's a little word called extras. And you can go on that and click, and we have information, just extra information. And if it's okay with you, we're going to put a sheet on this and put, yes. Okay? Oh, fabulous. And
yeah, I'll actually send you 2 things to put up there, Kate. One is a list of the symptoms, and second is a sheet that I actually, with permission, took from the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition. And it's actually a fact sheet for somebody to print out and log their symptoms.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, because most doctors have 7 minutes to see you.
Right.
And yes, and that's why they're always late, they're rushed, etc. They want you to get to the facts. And as females, we tend to tell stories. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate that also with a male doctor, they don't always, and female doctors don't always listen to us either. Mm-hmm. So what this does, it has you track your symptoms for 2 weeks. How many days were you bloated? How often did you feel full? Where is the pain specifically? So you can hand that sheet to your doctor. Yeah.
Perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
On the your10keys.com page, and then down at the bottom, click extras and just look for Jen's information on ovarian cancer. Perfect. So I read in the book that there are special risk factors, and I was very surprised at some of the information there. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the things that isn't, I mean, almost everybody knows somebody that's been impacted by by breast cancer. Lesser by ovarian cancer, but there's a connection between the two, and it's called the BRCA gene, the BRCA gene, breast cancer gene. So if you test positive for that BRCA gene, you are up to 40% more likely to get ovarian cancer. So, if you remember, I don't know how many years ago it was that Angelina Jolie had a double mastectomy and a full hysterectomy.
Right.
Right, because she was BRCA positive.
Okay.
Then on top of that, she also comes from Ashkenazi Jewish line. Mm-hmm. Now I'm also Ashkenazi Jewish, which means on top of that 11 to 40%, you're 10 times more likely to be a candidate for ovarian and breast cancer. Why? I joke, some people don't like this joke, but I think it's funny. We're kind of like West Virginia. We keep marrying each other, just keep it in the population, because Ashkenazi Jews, right, started with 4 founders, and then we wanted to stay within our religion, so we kind of mucked with our gene pool.
Wow. I did not know until I read that there was that high a risk factor.
Yep, absolutely. And, when you go to your doctor and say, prove to me I don't have ovarian cancer, they will do things like the BRCA test, and, oh, you're negative, don't worry about it. Nope. They will do something called a CA-125, which is the test for a particular blood protein in your blood. That's 80% false positive. Don't deal with that. What you want to ask for is an ultrasound, so they can go in and actually see. And probably next year, I'll be spearheading a campaign that's looking like with a friend called "Hello, Your Vagina Called and It Wants an Ultrasound." I get ultrasounds as prevalent as pap smears. Pap smear ultrasound should go together for every woman, because that is your friend to try to see whether there's anything funky that comes up. And if there's something funky that comes up, then you can go in for a CT scan or a PET scan.
Mm-hmm. That's what saved me, actually. My aunt, Kay, beloved aunt, my mother's sister, and my godmother, God bless her, died of ovarian cancer. And like your mom, just went through some horrible years. It was really, really tough.
Sorry.
But thanks. Yeah, God bless her. But I went in just to make sure, and found out that I didn't have ovarian cancer, thank goodness. However, they were able to find some other things. And so to everybody out there, please, please, please go get your ultrasound, check these lists. And I have to tell you, Jen, this was amazing to me. Okay, so for everybody that likes to read, you're going to love the stories in this book. And for those people that don't like to read, get the book anyway. I have it on my Kindle. And I'll tell you this, in the first of all, in the epilogue section are the do's and don'ts, which for anybody that has cancer, I think you should read that. Having known, unfortunately, a lot of people that have had cancer, I went through this and I thought, nobody tells you this stuff. It's just incredible. It's just incredible. Then you get to the part after that, and it goes through, it's pages and pages and pages of information that's so important. The risk factors, the genetics. It hits a lot of what Jen told you. Increasing age, whether it's, as she told you, it's not always that factor. Your reproductive history, hormone replacement history, that actually really surprised me, that a lot of, being on the pill there wasn't necessarily a link. That shocked me. What was the other thing? Oh, and then, I don't know if you can see.
I don't know which part it is.
Probably backwards. I think
What page is it? And I'll look in my book. I don't know if it's the same pages. Which part?
I don't know. It's Kindle. So you know how Kindle is. I have, it's at 97%. What can I do? But it goes through the symptoms of bloating, pelvic and abdominal pain, difficulty eating, and urinary symptoms, frequency or not. But what I loved also is it explains the blood tests and the diagnosis, and has chart after chart after chart. I haven't gotten to that part yet. But it is just amazing information. So
Thank you.
suggest that everyone, especially women, have it on your Kindle and, check it at least, tag on your calendar to check Jen's book at least once a year, if not every 6 months, just to go through the information so that you keep healthy, etc.
Well, can I tell you a story about that? I'll say the other thing I'm going to give you to put on your extras is I recorded a webinar with an OBGYN from Denver, May 8th, which is World Ovarian Cancer Day, and it's on my YouTube channel, so I'll send you the link to that. So if people want to watch this back and forth between me and the doctor, where I actually interview her about different things that she's seen, they can have access to that. So I did my mother was negative on the BRCA. Her CA-125 was never a marker. We didn't have, my great-grandmother, we think, died of breast cancer, but we don't know. So we had some breast cancer in our family. I had all those tests. Everything was negative. I had all the genetic testing. Everything was negative. And my cancer doc in Colorado, when I was living out there, really wanted me to have a full hysterectomy, because from his perspective, even though those markers were negative, he thought it would really reduce my risk of ovarian cancer. But I didn't want, I would say, my mom died 7 years ago. I'll be 54, so I was in my mid-40s. I wasn't anywhere near menopause, and I didn't want to be thrown into menopause. I said, look, let's wait for me to go through it naturally. It's not going to be that much time, right? So fast forward, when I turned 50, I started having really horrible, horrible cycles. I was spending $20 a month on products to try to deal with everything. And after 3 years, I could tell things were ebbing and waning and coming and going. All right, well, I'm finally entering menopause. Let me start the conversation with my gynecologist. And I said, look, I want to talk with you about having a hysterectomy because of my mother's history. She goes, well, there's no, I know your mother died of it, but all the markers were negative, so insurance won't pay for it. However, she said, you have terrible fibroids. And I said, what are you talking about? She goes, well, I told you that 3 years ago. She never told me. This is what many doctors do. They upload information. They expect you to read it. They send you an email and say, here's what this report is. So she never told me about these fibroids. I knew I had some cysts, and my gynecologist in Colorado, they would come, they would go, they'd be on the right, they'd be on the left. She's like, I don't know, your ovaries like to make cysts. That's what's happening. Well, that was the source of all the bleeding. And then when I began to put 2 and 2 together, Kate, I had bloating, I had problems eating, I had trouble urinating, and I had abdominal and lower back pain.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, this is like the shoemaker with his kids who have no shoes. Here I am advocating for this. I know of 3 women that were diagnosed early after reading my book or talking to me. And every time I'm like, Mom, we got one. Because I don't want any family to go through this. So eventually I went in for a full hysterectomy, no cancer, nothing, but that I hadn't put 2 and 2 together, as aware of this as I am, because I have such a high tolerance for pain. So, right? So it's super important that we're hyper vigilant about our bodies, and that if we are having a distressful menstrual cycle, that we really start taking note and writing down what's happening to make sure.
Wow. So Jen, thank you for the information. Get her book. And what's it called? Do you have it?
Yes, it's called When I Die, Take My Panties, Turning Your Darkest Moments into Your Greatest Gifts. It is not a bummer of a book. It's very much an inspirational book. I really wrote it because I feel like so often we wait for the bad stuff to happen before we really take on doing good stuff with our lives or appreciating our lives. And I really wrote it to inspire people. So it's not a sad book. There is some sad parts in it, but my mom and I wrote some of my material together when I was doing stand-up comedy. So there's funny parts in it too.
There are a lot of funny parts in it. I loved the book. I just thought it was fantastic. And I practiced how I was going to say it because it's such a funny title. But since you were the comedian, I wanted you to be able to
thanks.
So definitely check out the book, check out the ending for all of the information. And be sure to go to Jen's site, Jen Coken. We have it down below. .com, and she has lots of information on there, and then also what she does to help people move forward in their lives. So thank you again for joining us today. I'm Kate Helmers. This is the Stepping Forward with Kate show, and get all the information on your10keys.com. Thank you.